Hi, Kathy. Um, so I just wanted to ask you a couple questions
Hey.
today about Ho'oponopono. Um, I guess one of the main things that I was really curious about is like what first pulled you to even try a class and maybe when was that?
Okay, well, I kind of have a funny story because, when you're asking the universe for something, you may have one thing in mind, and the universe is like, well, here's something way better. So, I remember distinctly being on the phone telling one of my coaches, my coach at the time, this was probably like in 2011, maybe 2010. I was telling her I would like to learn Qigong because I'd like to have a better mastery of energy in the body. And while I was on the telephone, this guy had shown up because I had posted all these wire hangers on Craigslist. And so I was on the phone, my husband was dealing with that, and they couldn't find them. Like, where are all these wire hangers? And they couldn't find them, and I was on the phone. So the guy's like, well, and prior to that, like the night before, the guy's wife had had a dream about creating something from all these wire hangers. So then I had posted them for free on Craigslist, and he had called me saying, yeah, you have wire hangers, and how many of them do you have? And I was like, a lot. And he's like, you're sure? Like, and how many is a lot? And like all these questions. And I was just like, this is weird. so he showed up at my house. They couldn't find all the hangers. So the guy was like, well, I must be here for something other than this. So he started talking about working with this kahuna, this Hawaiian wisdom woman, a shaman, and invited us to an event the following week. So, I was like, oh, how interesting. I was just wanting to tap into more energy and like mastery of energy. And here's this that shows up, right? So I studied with her for probably a good 2 years, and then she retired. And in studies with her, we did all sorts of things. We did all sorts of energetic practices. I even fainted once. Working with ancestors, working with past lives, working with Akashic records, working with cords, energetic cords um, between people, and of course, Ho'oponopono. So, yeah, it wasn't that I directly went to learn Ho'oponopono. It was that was included in all of this.
Oh, that is such a fun story. Oh my goodness. Yeah, very intriguing. Okay, I guess another question that I have would be like, what is it that you love about it?
Oh my gosh. Okay, first of all, it saved me. Okay, Ho'oponopono, like, there are many different ways of doing this. So it's really about, um, the literal translation is making things right between family, friends, spirit, making things right. And it's really about letting go of your previous perception, like recognizing that your judgment of a situation is actually what's causing the problem, not the situation itself. And you are a player in the situation. Obviously, you're there, right? And so traditionally, like a long, long time ago, the way of doing Ho'oponopono was to get all the people involved together in a safe space and have people mediate between the parties and have everybody sort of own their role in it. Like, yes, I was a cause in this, right? And so everyone would take responsibility for their role, and then forgiveness was given. And if forgiveness was asked, it was expected that you would forgive and let go. All right, so this is a totally different time from now. Like, it'd be very interesting to try to do that these days. I know some people do. And really it's with oneself, and oneself, your own connection to that quote problem or the event or whatever it is, and receiving that forgiveness in the way we practice Ho'oponopono now. So in my studies with this kahuna, we did various practices of Ho'oponopono, including one which was a meditation. I know I'm doing a really long answer to your question. One which was a meditative practice in which you call the beings, who need forgiveness and for whom you need forgiveness from, into a room with some sort of energetic support from archetypes or the God Lono, and then you do this forgiveness process. Then later I learned a super long form version of Ho'oponopono, which includes like, if I and my ancestors have offended you or your ancestors from the beginning of time through now, like this whole, you read this entire thing, which is very long, but really works. And I had this crazy renter, like he was a nut. He was schizophrenic. And I've studied an enormous amount of things. So I was just in my office, like I have stacks of manuals and stuff. I'm like, wow, I've forgotten I've taken some of these classes. And I use tools from Access Consciousness and from all these different things to try to like make peace with this renter, get him out of there, like all this stuff. And I would play like clearings all day long, and then that didn't work. So then I played like Ganesha mantras all day long, like all this stuff. And what eventually really brought me peace, and gotta say, having him live like on my property, and me sometimes being home alone at night, like just freaked me, because he was a wild card. You did not know what he would do. And so I was just like, and Ho'oponopono was the only thing that really brought me deep peace. And eventually, whether it was causative or coinciding, whatever, I don't care. Like doing this, I started to do it daily, sometimes a couple of times a day. He just one day said, oh, you're right. You're right. I will be out of here on February 1st. I came a year ago and I'll be out. Whereas previously he was like, you forged my name on the lease and like all these insane things. And, I'm not leaving and I'm gonna sue you and all this stuff. And then I did this Ho'oponopono and just, I don't want to say religiously, but very like, wow, I really feel better when I do this, so I'm gonna do this. And it changed.
Oh, that's so cool. Awesome. Yeah. So it's like I was gonna actually ask you is like, how can you apply this in everyday life? And then you actually basically answered that question with your example of the tenant. And yet I kind of wonder like, how else can you possibly use that in just everyday life? Because sometimes it's like we learn this practices and then it's like we actually have no clue how to apply it in our day-to-day life. It's like, wow, that's nice. I went to this workshop and learned this thing, and then now what, right?
I think
So
that actually happens a lot, where it's like you're so lit up after a workshop and you're like, yes, I got all this stuff, and then slowly you'll go back to your old habits. And for me, this was one of those things where it just threaded in. Especially like, you do not need to, I'm going to share like different Ho'oponopono practices because I think they're each useful for what they're useful for. Meaning when you have the intuitive sense that, oh gosh, I want to do this, or I need to sit and do this long form, because most people know Ho'oponopono as, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And those 4 phrases are amazing. They're really useful, and they're much more easily threaded into your day than this whole like, oh, if I and my ancestors have offended you in any way, or your ancestors, like that is more, you have a situation and you really want to sit with it and make peace with it. Whereas, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, is something that can be weaved into any moment, right? Like recognizing that, oh, I'm sorry, my perception is off. My perspective is off because I decided this is a problem, or you're a problem, or you're annoying, or you're whatever. Like, or there's too much traffic. Oh, that's a judgment. I'm sorry. I love you. I love divinity. I love life. I love me, right? Please forgive me for that misperception. And thank you. Thank you for having the opportunity to see that I was judging, or see that, or even just thank you for having this experience so that I can uproot another of those core judgments. Where with these 4 phrases, you're taking constant responsibility for whatever's presenting itself in your life, and your sort of interface with it. Because if we didn't have memories from this life, memories from past lives, if we didn't have memories that were causing agitation, we would just be functioning from inspiration all the time, right? Inspired action. And a lot of us do function from inspired action, but then we also function from the memories, or what Dr. Hewlin calls the data. And that causes agitation. That causes, distrust and aggravation and all of these things. And so by using these 4 phrases, and by using the long form, and by using the meditations, like, we're just clearing the data so we can come back to this space where more and more we function from inspiration and inspired action.
Wow. Love it. I can't wait to start this class.
A lot of peace. So much
Yeah.
peace. Yeah.
Yeah. Even just the way you talk about it. And I'm like looking at my life in places where I'm still like a lot in reaction, and I've never really known what to do to kind of like, I've asked questions and I've tried different tools on it, and yet it hasn't quite shifted yet. So I'm curious to try this out and see, apply it to some of the places that.
It's amazing, Jennifer. And then I just want to say, like, if any of those 4 phrases doesn't feel like, for me, for a long time, saying I'm sorry just didn't feel right, because it's like, oh, I love you, thank you, please forgive me. Those felt like high vibes, and then I'm sorry took it down 3 notches. And so if any one of those doesn't feel right, then you just don't use that. I mean, you could just say thank you all the time, right? In fact, I wonder what life would be like if we did, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Not necessarily to everybody verbally, but just like to life itself and to whatever presents.
Wow, I love that. And that's like, I guess one of the things that I absolutely love about you is it's like, um, you'll take an idea or a modality and a concept, but you'll also have like this brilliance with like allowing people to be them with it, and to have it actually work in their lives, instead of like creating a whole bunch of structure and rigidity around it. It's like, that's so awesome. Instead of like, it's, this is the right way to do it, and if you don't do it this way, it's not going to work. It's like, actually, how is it going to work for you, and how can you apply it in your life? And if it doesn't work, just throw it away, right? So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I came from a very rigid system. I came from ballet, and so everything had to be right. And then you go to a different teacher and they're like, no, that's not the way to hold your head. This is the way. You're like, oh my God. Right? And so it becomes this very like, am I getting it right? Am I doing it right type of thing? And then you're sort of like you're confined and trying to maneuver within this confinement, instead of like, it's got to work for you. And if this doesn't work, like, then ask yourself, how can I make it work for me? Or what works faster? And just by what works faster, what would be more effective, then you begin to work from inspiration even more.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Oh gosh. Yeah, just learn about Ho'oponopono if it calls. I've been doing Ho'oponopono since 2011. Just these various different ways of doing it. And then, even this year I met another teacher who has a different perspective on it, and as I've worked with it, I've really found some insights which I'm excited to share because it even made it more spacious for me, more a greater sense of well-being, just the sense that life is okay regardless of the craziness that's going on. It's like, okay, cool, how can I dance within this craziness and use this craziness to create something greater too, because when we shake it up, then things emerge too. So thank you for this conversation, Jennifer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy.